Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital. The Alternative Digital. Real issues, real talk.
Good evening. My name is Norman Tumhibise. I'm sitting in for Edgar Matthew Karuhanga, who is indisposed, but nonetheless he considered also giving me this opportunity to sit with the big man on my left, led of course by Honorable Awich Pola. In the middle seat is Honorable Ocheno Joseph, and the extreme end is Mr. Kazoba Charles. He's in blue, of course not so sure whether he's an FDC or he's a PFF person. Unfortunately, there are two gentlemen here, Honorable, which is known at least some bit of yellowish. At least he would carry at least a banana for us to know that he's
he fought to look yellow.
Yeah, so that the public can at least know by the dressing code. But today, anyways, we shall proceed from there. Of course, Mr. Awich, he has forgotten his red, but nonetheless, we have some red in the studio to represent the UPC of the people. My name is Norman Mims, and we are having the hotline show 7 to 9 p.m. today. I wish to congratulate whoever has gone through Easter season on whether you enjoyed it or otherwise. Most likely, there are those who still have loud misery. We have lost retired Major John Kazora, an NRA fighter. I'm sure he was with Honorable Awich back in the day. So literally the country is mourning. I do not know whether also NRA/M is also, I don't know,
Mourning
maybe
anymore?
mourning. But Honorable Awich will share with the rest of the public on whether he celebrates retired Major, now with the late John Kazora, who has authored 2 books, Betrayed by My Leader Edition 1 and Betrayed by My Leader Edition 2, which in particular summarize what he thought was unfair and what he went through. But nonetheless, we are here to dig deeper into the political parties' roadmap. NRM launched its roadmap days ago. UPC, we are yet to find out from Honorable Ochieno, and of course the non-partisan in quotes, Charles Kazoba, will try to dissect on whether what Mr. Awich and or Paula are telling the public on whether or not they are right or otherwise. I want to begin with you, Honorable Awich, to tell us how precisely your week has been, and then we shall proceed from there, sir.
Well, thank you so much, and greeting to the viewers. The week has been, as usual, very eventful. If we say the week ends on Saturday, depending on which calendar you want to use, or it ends yesterday, which is a Sunday. Either way, we started off with many routine activities in the office. It wasn't quite eventful, and we didn't have much of bad news. We are just into our day-to-day activities, which is about the political roadmap. So nothing much was quite eventful over the week. And as I always tell my friends, that no news is good news. Because if many eventful things had happened, which would be worth to report, most likely it would have been bad news. But I always will tell my colleagues that no news is good news. So it was quite eventful, not eventful, until close of the week or in the new week, if you start by Sunday, that we started getting news of the death of our comrade, Kazora. I don't know whether you want me to mention now or later.
It's so well in your intro, it's okay.
You see, the position and the views held by Kazora is those type of contradictions you have in a normal functioning organization. People have different views. Kazora is a very senior person in NRA. He has held a position of command and position of staff duty, including being at the high command, as doing staff duties at the high command. Now, a normal contradiction is that there are always major and minor contradictions, and this is reflected or manifested in different views and opinions. Kazora's views seem to think that what he thought was the original line, or the kind of thinking, was not being followed to the letter. And we have many of those comrades.
What do you think in particular, yourself?
Me, what I think is that we live in a dynamic society. We are not hard and frozen. When you set out of a method of work, across the road you have obstacles and challenges, and these affect the original plan, and you have to be flexible to achieve an objective. For example, we could have planned not knowing the strength of multilateral organizations like IMF, World Bank, or we could have underestimated the international forces like bilateral relations like America. So it means therefore that when you come to operate in real practice, such unexpected challenges, when it occurs your way, You either have to take a detour, or you jump over them, or you pass over them, or you even appear to work with them at a moment. Now, colleagues who are very hard in their views will see that as a diversion or compromise, and they will accuse you of abandoning the original line. And yet it's just a challenge that we had agreed on these minimum methods or minimum points. But here we are in the theater now. These are the unexpected challenges that we have met. The global dynamics, both bilateral and multilateral. Bilateral is between Uganda and other America, for example. Multilateral is you have the organization like World Bank, IMF. So these kind of challenges, when you put it into reality and you change, some colleagues will cry foul. Of course, including manifestation in democracy. You would come from the bush and you think a movement system is the best political system. We shall make Ugandans be in a movement system. It's a good system of governance. But when you come across, and then the next day they tell you, come on, go multi-party. Stop that. And now to conform to multi-party as a demand says, you have to make compromises and changes. And some colleagues will understand it like abandoning the original line.
But you see, Honorable Wich, before we dive deeper into the topic of discussion, when you talk about compromise, to so many people, it is assumed that the compromise is bent. The entire nation rather compromises for the benefit of the big man in the chair. There is not one single moment where he has compromised, because even when we were shifting from the movement system to the NRM, you know how hard it was for the big man to accept. But most importantly, is when he was asked to drop the name NRM, because to many it was purely confusing the public. Literally it remained, that's why they tell you, for us the movement, because very many voices were of the view that, look, you have in quotes hoodwinked or rather led Ugandans under the movement system for full 10 plus years. Now we are coming into the multi-party dispensation. DP is known for being a political party back in the day, and UPC and so many political parties. So voices were rather advising the president, why don't we have the movement system come in a new shape, so that the people who had been stuck within the movement gets to understand the difference between the movement system and new political parties, which literally to many wasn't achieved. What do you mean when you say there has been a compromise, and yet to many the compromise is literally benefiting? If it's about compromising our constitution, it is to benefit the big man. If it's about the age limit, it is him. It's about the term limit, it is him. Everything. What do you mean when you say compromise?
I mean here is going by the literature that we used to read. I mean literature that shapes our consciousness. Political economy, dialectical materialism, historical materialism, and the rest. You would see that our ideology was center-left. The congressman will tell you. Now, the shift from the center-left to going to the economic system, which is purely capitalist, is what I'm saying, the change, the compromise. Now, some cadres up to date would not believe you that how would you be from the center-left or even left itself, and now you come to this extreme. That is the kind of compromise I'm seeing. And that's the compromise I'm saying. Some cadres would say, you have betrayed us. You were left, you have crossed over to getting money from IMF, to total liberalization of the economy. We thought we were going to have more of national assets, like UEB, like NITIL, you know, those parastatals. And now you have sold them. You have, that is a crossing I'm saying. You have crossed from center-left to the other side. And those are the contradictions I'm saying. It brings minor or major disagreement among cadres. They think you have abandoned the original line.
Honorable, hold it there. Let's switch to Honorable Ochieno Joseph. Greetings. Summarize for us how your week has been, and some bit of any message, or it could be a condolence message, anything about Major Kazora, and of course we shall proceed to the extreme left.
You know, I think
or you don't like him because he was part of them when they fought you. You can, feel free to share your thoughts.
Kazora was a Ugandan. And of course, for us in UPC, even if he wasn't, so long as he's an African, we would mourn. And for those of us in UPC, even if possibly there were a Muzungu amongst the men of the Muzungu that, for example, in the 80s, the water government brought in some Bazungu to come and help us with the rehabilitation of the coffee marketing board in Bugorobi, and they were killed. And it's believed that I think about 5 Bazungu, these guys may have been killed by, they were definitely killed by bandits. So they may or may not necessarily have been NRA. And so those are human citizens of the world who basically came to Uganda to try and support the rehabilitation of our coffee industry. For me and for our party, we do not believe that any individual has got a responsibility on the lives of anybody. So any death globally is a sad death. That said, I think I was just going to start with the demise of the Pope. One,
sure.
I'm a Catholic, but number 2,
and how it skipped your
the
mind,
Pope is a global citizen, and as you know, without prejudices to other faiths, somehow the Pope tends to be possibly the most revered global religious leader for whatever other reason. But global, I think, partly because of the size of the church and the influence of the church of Rome. So the world is grieving, and Pope Francis happened to have been one of the much more contemporary, sometimes fairly controversial, possibly radical in many ways, and very interesting the conversation that's going to take place both globally and within faith communities, and of course including the Catholic Church, in how they manage the transition. And may the black smoke emerge just as we wait for the black smoke come next year, what happens in State House in Tebe. The Pope visited Uganda, but of course you know that Uganda, this country, was able to host the first Pope on this continent in 1969, thanks to the fantastic foundation of UPC and the fantastic influence and created by the then Dr. Milton Obote, who worked out some of these grants. Granted, part of the issue was the Uganda Matters, but we hosted the first Pope on the continent in 1969. So very important. This country can be very powerful. I believe that if we were to sort out some of the contradictions that we're talking about, it would be very good. But number 2, come then to Major Kazora. My condolences to his family, his comrades, and of course his various partners, both in FDC and of course in NRA. The Kazoras and others were these people who were basically used and abused and dumped by Mr. Museveni because what they called the struggle was really never a struggle. What Comrade Rich is right to call ideological contradiction is that Mr. Museveni, as a student and in the early part of the struggle, including the anti-mean struggle, Mr. Museveni dumped UPC to suggest that UPC was not left-wing enough. So the guy claimed he was such a Marxist that he dare not touch anything for profit. And so it's not surprising that some young guys, including the early 80s actually, when I was going to the bush, many radical left students and leaning and radical other leftists, including from Dar es Salaam, I met one of his former lecturers who became a friend of mine elsewhere, who thought Museveni was this guy who was going to take on African nationalism and take on ownership and things like that. But for the guy to hit State House, as Comrade Rich gives early a disclaimer, and the guy sells literally everything called the Republic of Uganda. And the guy moves on not only to excess capitalism, but becomes one of the most possibly primitive capitalists you can ever think about and primitive, I'm using it from an economic perspective, not necessarily language use, where there's grab. So Mr. Museveni's capitalism, if you see what happens in Uganda today, it is basically man-eat-all kind of stuff. It's not normal standard capitalism as we would perhaps link to America, which is the established capitalist state. Britain right now, which is an established currently being led by a social democratic political party, the British Labour Party, the Labour Party would find it very strange what happens in this country, that even water, people's air to breathe is sold, that even when you go to the market. So this is an extreme thing. So maybe those are some of the things that Zoros talk about. But beyond that, the nonsense about democracy, that you go to the bush and then you claim elections, election Z, you go to the bush and then you claim public services Z, and Comrade, which actually in the last 2 days, there are videos doing the round, which I've talked about the other day. Mr. Museveni in 1988, I think, December, went to Mulago Hospital and was busy boasting. The guy was still young and fairly handsome, you know. Oh, you know, these railway lines, we shall put this one to Kasese, whatever. And then you look at the Uganda today, we have, it's like shocking. So Kazora must have died an extremely sad man, not because of the internal contradictions within NRM or indeed NRA or perhaps even their struggle, but generally, if he was generally a Ugandan nationalist at the time, who got it wrong, thinking that it was going to save Uganda. Because to credit, some people went to join Museveni in the bush, as I said, because they genuinely believed there was something there in for them, you know. And if Kazora was one of them, then that guy has died a very, very haunted man.
Okay. Decided to not, but the way Honorable, stop threatening my guest. They were looking at him.
Yeah, because I want to reply.
No, not now.
I want to reply.
You had that sharp eye, yeah?
I want to reply.
That threatens him, but nonetheless, let's hear from
my brother.
I want to reply. I want to reply.
Kazova, and then shall come back. Kazova, use your means, and then we proceed accordingly.
Thank you. When Ocheno said that maybe these guys were deceived and manipulated to go to the bush, I wanted to hear Major, which is
whether he's one of the people who were confused.
because that is also possible, by the way.
But I think that's also not fair, because he's here and he's seemingly very contented with where he is, and I doubt whether that suggests that he was literally compromised to believe that what he was fighting for was unfair. But let's hear from.
Do you mind me just because
in
I'm
a second?
just to wrap it up?
Yeah.
No, actually, it's true that I said that, but it's also true, and I am saying this for a reason. There are also people who find themselves as victims.
Yeah, trapped.
You know, trapped into that war zone. There are people from communities, some people in Uganda, some people actually in Western Uganda, who basically, you couldn't really blame them joining, quote, the struggle or being part of that, including joining NRA. But of course, we know there's some people who are coerced into that. So there are people who found themselves kidnapped.
I
don't want us to say that.
I'll hold you there.
Yeah, sure.
Only that I had some very, very burning concern, but I will raise it when I come back to you in the second round. Because when you say people were trapped, one would also wonder that there could be some people who are also trapped in UPC. And the best way to get rid of it was, in fact, Museveni himself thought he had been trapped in UPC.
But Museveni was liberated by UPC. That one I reject in Jesus' name.
In the second round, you will, Mr. Kazova, sorry for those minutes.
Actually, it could be true that also some were trapped, but also some joined for convenience.
Yeah,
What do you mean convenience?
I know the late Behakanega of Avema.
Excuse me.
Lieutenant
He
Behakanega.
had committed some crime.
Yeah.
So he joined to run away from.
Yes.
There is a quite number of them that had been in court. Okay, criminals actually, not even just in court.
Yeah.
Criminals, and they had to run to
Just
for safety.
The other day, I was reading a very interesting story on how Tinyefuza and Muwezi escaped from police.
Yes.
So there are some stories, some could have joined for convenience, some were running.
Others out of conviction, others out of confusion.
Yes.
Yeah.
So from the start, some didn't join because they appreciated the ideology. They even didn't know what NRA was about. Now, for me, my week, of course, it has been as always since January, because I'm up and down trying to arrange a discussion within this country, national discussion between soldiers and civilians, so that we don't eat each other and burn this country. This discussion, I've called it Civil Military Symposium. So it's really taking my time.
When is it? Maybe if we could have this
on
broadcasting.
June 5th. That is between Martyrs Day and Heroes Day.
You called it Civilian Military?
Civil Military Symposium. I'm also mourning the death of the Pope, although I should actually be celebrating. I don't believe at that age somebody should mourn. We should be celebrating. 88 is quite something. God will have given you life. That is the exact age I asked God to leave this world. I want to leave this world when I'm 88. So at 88, you have served, you have run your race, you have contributed to the world. And I think he has. So we should celebrate him as Catholics, but may also share the other faith. I'm also born again, although I'm a Catholic. And when the news of Kazora came in, I remembered that group.
Betrayed by my leader.
Yes, I remembered the group of Reform Agenda. At that time I was in New Vision, but based in Imbarara. That group, had it maintained the pace that it departed with that departed from NRM, I think we wouldn't be worried today that Uganda is likely to ban. Had they been given an opportunity, for instance, to also take charge of this country. They had very good ideas. The Zindanas, the Amanyamshegas, the Kategayas, Matembes. The group was big. They were so vibrant. We used to attend their meetings because they always came to Mbarara. And fortunately, they have all scattered into different directions. So we are left with people who don't appreciate governance in this country to aspire for political positions. And I think that is a challenge for us, all of us, as a country.
Is it intentional?
It is intention, of course, for the survival of some people. But in the long term, it will cost this country. Yes, temporarily it can address the interests of some individuals. But in the long term, our country is going to be very weak in terms of governance because of the caliber of actors that have come on board. We have crooks, we have thugs, thieves that are posturing as political leaders.
Seriously?
Yes. They don't really care. It's about looting and looting and looting and destroying the Pearl of Africa. So I hope the witches, before they get out of politics, they should think again and see how we can go back to those years, the 90s, when they had just come from the bush, what they were promising?
Oh, it's
Can it
because
be
there wasn't
achieved?
much to steal. It's also possible. You see, when you might find that there wasn't much to steal. Perhaps there wasn't too much to steal or to loot, like Mr. Kazoba is saying, and maybe that's why they were behaving very, very properly, according to you. There was a lot.
No, they're still being shy. They're trying to build foundations. These guys were
Foundation
still,
of what?
They still had crooked slippers. Maybe they didn't know what. No, Uganda was wealthier then than today. Of
Or
course
they didn't know the value for what was there.
No, they didn't. They,
At the time.
now is what actually come to think of, time will come when there's nothing to steal, because one of the things these guys are stealing now is basically donor aided money. In practical terms, what these guys are stealing are literally trillions that we borrow. The rest, from our banks to our roads to our buses to our trains to our land to our everything
I'll
else,
come back to you,
they've
Mr.
they've stolen.
Kazoba. I'll finish your point and then we come back to the NRM.
So this should also challenge us to think of how we want to go past 2026, because there is a clash of generations. There are young people who are saying, please, we want to be in charge of our country. We have new ideas. We are more sophisticated than you guys, where you're telling us that we irrigate our crops with
Mineral water
these,
bottle.
mineral water bottles. For us, the young ones, we are
We do
more
irrigation.
knowledgeable than you, so your time has come, please give way. And the witches are saying, shy, you people, you will destroy this country. You are too young. But they forget that they were equally young when they came into power. So, how do we resolve this contradiction? I don't know.
Okay, that's quite interesting intro, and I wanted to, of course, to thank the three of you for giving us that bit of history, because I brought in the late now Major Kazora, of course, to lay a foundation over the how did we even reach here, because I have read his book from the first letter to the last one, and of course what is quite interesting is betrayed by my leader. Not him alone, but there are so many. And also there are those that don't feel the betrayal. And of course, one of them amongst us here, present, he's very, very convinced that he has never been betrayed. So the Kazoras and others, we are simply...
Maybe he has been betrayed silently.
Okay, no. I think buying from the words of Mr. Kazora, I realize that he considers you a very, very, very undamaged fruit amongst the other basket that it could be, in his words, could be, in fact, not only him, also Honorable Ocheno's words, in a basket of spoiled fruits. How would you make it being a midst? or you consider all the fruits that you are a midst?
I really ably answer the question of the fruit, but I had commented about late Kazora, and you told me to hold there.
Yeah, sure.
A point I have finished is very dangerous because it can be misinterpreted. But I want to finish on Kazora by saying the kind of contradictions that make comrades of NRM cadres all different views does not make him a devil. So Kazora held that view, and maybe his view and criticisms helped to shape NRM and push it somewhere higher. But all the same, my understanding is that by the time he died, he was more or less back among his comrades. By the time of his death, he was more or less...
Out of conviction or out of no choice?
Out of conviction. But it is not harmful to have a different view. It is good to criticize. And if you don't want to be bound by collective responsibility, then you step aside. Because if Kazora had remained, he would be bound by collective responsibility. So he didn't want to be bound. He wanted to express his views out, and he stepped aside and did it. But those are the normal contradictions we have in NRM.
In a second, Honorable Witch, I represent very many people, but I'm in particular people who follow the political sequence of events. I have of late realized that when a senior citizen passes on, NRM, not you in particular, NRM comes to say the disease was now in good books with us. What is causing that trend? When Dr. Nawiso passed on, they were so quick to say, Honorable Nawiso, no, guys, forget. He had become one of us. Honorable Kazora has passed on. You are here telling us, no, by the time of his demise, he had become part of us. Is that an honest opinion, or it is simply politics?
Well, it is judgeable. Was he not?
We don't know.
It is judgeable. Was he not? And this one can only be testified by
the
family members.
Okay.
So if he was not, then that would be a lie. If he
Maybe
was,
I
then
could
it is.
answer.
Yeah, sure.
Let me,
You
by giving
guys.
another example.
Yeah, you'll have your time, don't mind.
Uh,
When in a second, you'll have
Just
the,
very good information. When Kategaya came back, allegedly came back, I think I was the first people that talked to him as Minister for East Africa. The truth is, he had not changed his position from the criticism. No. And I realized that most of these people, even after they talk to Museveni, after they have gone into opposition, they don't change their views, their stand. But what happens is that as comrades who were once together, they agree to work again together. But not that they agree.
on what he's doing.
Yes, they don't.
I will compensate you a minute, not mind. Proceed, sir.
I had finished with the Kazora. I'm not going back. But I'm saying the contradiction that I had is normal, and he moved on, avoided being put together in collective responsibility, stepped aside. But I'm saying at the time of death, he was with his comrades. Now, I come to the question of Pope. The Pope's death, I'd left it deliberately because I thought it happened this week. Remember, I struggled to define what a week was.
Yeah, sure.
And I thought that if I was to talk about last week's, my summary was last week, I deliberately left because, you know, I'm always, according to NRM discipline, I answer your questions
Vis-a-vis the opposition in discipline.
I answer your questions squarely. If you ask me about last week, I talk about last week. But if you said we talk about everything up to the Pope's death this week, then I would also add by saying I'm a Catholic, baptized and slapped in the cheek. In Catholic, with confirmation, the bishop slaps your cheek. So the bishop slapped my cheek. I'm a real Catholic, and it is unfortunate he has lived. And therefore, like Kazoba said, he has lived this life. And I think I wish it could be that, so that when I'm gone, they don't say he has rested. They say he has lived a full life. I want them to say he has lived a full life, not that he has rested, as if I was tired. So he has really lived a full life. He has climbed to the top position of Catholic Church. And then what else? We just pray that whoever comes will strengthen the faith. Now, there was a question to me that were people deceived to join or not?
I wanted even to re-echo the same question.
Now,
in particular, the Kadogos and of course other middle.
Let me say this. Big population like the young ones that we are saying, the young ones, there was a time when the battle line was drawn. Those caught up the other side, including Luero. There are areas which were liberated and areas which were not. So those caught on the other side ended up joining. But also because the discipline of UNLA, or the discipline, made it easier to be with rebels than
the misconduct of UNLA.
Yes, it forced the other side. So many people joined. That is a bigger lot. But also I like to talk about this conscious educated lot like Kazora. That lot was, remember, by 81-80, there was only one university, Makerere University. And it was unheard of a graduate not to get a job. These people would get a job. But there were conscious graduates who left Makerere, who would even know, I will write my last exams and I will go.
Like Kazora had his graduation in the bush.
Mugisha Muntu, the Tumukunde, and all these were people who made conscious decision. And yet they knew for sure after coming out, they would get jobs. But
which they did.
So these people decided to commit class suicide. Class suicide in that, first of all, the family they came from, the Mugisha Muntu, the Kazora. Many of them were either children of chiefs, children of reverends, children of high school teachers, or rich people. These guys decided to commit class suicide by going to the bush to walk naked and in rags and in lies. Now, these are people who made conscious decision for the involvement. Now, the other group, of course, there were those who even at the very least had tribal sentiments. They saw the army and government like being northerners, and they therefore thought there would be time to revenge, including those who had conflict with the law. But I can assure you, these people went to the bush and were baptized. The siasa they got in the bush told them, what? You have come to fight tribal war? Forget. You think you are going to use this to raid or to loot? Forget. The guys were baptized. The siasa that Museveni had imparted and going on, the political wing, the political commissariat in the bush was so strong that even somebody who came thinking he would do a tribal revenge got converted. Now, this makes me remember one comrade who died called late Ondoga Ori Amaza. Now, Ondoga, for some reason, was such a genius. He nearly knew what took anybody in the bush. For example, he would be in a cashier mess in Kololo. Those days, the cashier mess, I don't know whether it is still working. And Ondoga would strictly point at each commander and said, you man, this is what brought you. You man, this is you, I know you, I know you. And he would laugh about it. But he would say that with a view that whoever went with his other narrow interest, the siasa there cooked him and became a commissar and became a born again in NRM and fought and became a cadre. Therefore, various reasons contributed to going to the bush, including those who committed class suicide, the group of Jim Muezi, the group of Tumukunde, the Tinyefunza, the Mugisha Muntu, the Kazora. All these guys came from averagely good families by the standard of that time. But they consciously saw something was wrong and they consciously joined and committed class suicide, and then they regained their class.
How did they, Honorable? I don't want to apply the legal way of asking questions, and I don't want this to sound like a leading question which may require yes or no. You have articulated keenly about the reasons for which most of the people joined the Bush War. You mentioned, of course, you've talked about tribal sentiments, you mentioned, and the rest. Don't you think this could be the same reason for which the same people who had been conscious while being convinced to fight the UPC back then considered the same reasons to now say, look, this isn't what took us to the bush?
Of course, those are the contradictions I'm saying, that when you plan according to the bush planning and you come here and you find challenges that I've already explained, how relationship with states affect your internal system, how multilateral organizations like IMF, World Bank affect, that is when people say, no, this is not what we went to the bush. For example, the IMF, World Bank contributed to the selling of these assets, and those selling of assets annoyed some cadres.
Which?
Yes.
When will there be a day that you will consider holding your mistakes than pushing them abroad? I'm asking on behalf of the Ugandans. Every now and again, you will hear the president mention the West, but forgetting that the same West supported him. He will say NUP or any other opposition is being funded or supported or hoodwinked by the West. When is it that you will broadly say, I think this is our mistake as a country, and therefore, the earlier we sit on the round table, the better. Secondly, you know, when such sentiments come on board, you have defended, and which is a very wonderful job. Personally, what do you think? Are you still on the right path? Because I've mentioned the Kazoras, the Shamut, and the rest. Personally, Honorable Which, what do you think?
First of all, your first question was how the import of the role of external factor. Well, I could have chosen, I was just listing examples of challenges that was unplanned for. I could even choose to give an internal example if you're not comfortable with external example.
Yes.
But you can see that even when I was talking about the selling of assets, the liberalization, these are internal matters. But even Comrade Utieno here will accept that the selling of assets, which is an internal matter, was dictated by external factors. But if you are not comfortable with me giving you external examples or examples that link that, I can give you examples of internal factor, squarely internal factor that came, which was unplanned for, that led to a change of events. For example, multi-party. I could tell you that we did not think Cecilia Gwal and Rwanyarare would put up such a tough resistance to oppose the movement and therefore push us to a multi-party, including their demonstration, seminars,
I like pushing you.
workshops,
You did not have
yes, workshops, and even court cases.
Yeah.
They took court cases, they say Mugerere. So if you're not comfortable with me giving external example, I can give you internal example to prove to you that some cadres did not know we would find obstacles that would bring us into detour, coming up or going down. And such detour, some cadres call it a betrayal.
But Honorable Which,
So are you now happy that I've removed external examples?
I want to add this, and so that we can.
You still had two other questions, I don't know.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, that one I'll repeat it. But firstly, we are talking about Honorable Rwanyarare, Honorable Cecilia Ogwal, and of course Honorable now the late Semogerere. Those are close to 15 years later. I mean, from 1986 when you captured power, you sold whatever you sold earlier before Cecilia Ogwal of 2005 when the political parties came on board. You see, accounting for the first 15 years is what is very important. But also the other question, which I don't want you to avoid, what do you think as a senior NRM cadre are things as per what made you fight or otherwise? Or you think things could perhaps change along the way? Who knows? And then we shall first dig deeper into your roadmap, because we needed this backup ground, sir.
You see, if I'm to answer your question as to why we fought or as to why NRM fought, you can just easily look at the minimum 10-point program. It is coded down. It is written.
Look at the other,
it is
your
written.
how
It
they
is
look
coded.
at you.
It is coded. Coding here means it is written down.
Yeah, sure.
So it is written down in the minimum 10-point program. That was what we sought to rectify.
So that,
and it has been done over and over because it had to be transformed now into national development plan, it had to be captured in the various national budgets that came up, and it is, others are completed, others are still to be completed. So that is just to answer that. If I may conclude here, therefore,
sure do.
I would say we really condole for the death of Kazora. He was young. Remember, he was one of those very clear-headed candidates to the extent that Kampala, being the only city then to get what then we call
DC?
Special District Administrator,
SDA.
SDA. He was the first SDA
of Kampala. Yeah.
of Kampala. And we had had several SDAs in the captured areas, in areas back
But
this
interesting,
side.
you with the city.
But Kampala, it was him. I remember Ginger, he went to go, this guy who had a wife who was East African Legislative Assembly guy from Rukunjiri. He was because he was PC 7th Battalion. He died a Lieutenant Colonel. The wife was in East African Parliament.
Mishambi.
Yeah, Mishambi. Yeah, Mishambi became the SDA Ginger, and it went on until the Diva became SDA Kapchora. So you could see the clear-headedness. But this is the dynamics and the contradictions that we normally find in the movement, even at a family level.
Okay.
See, I have a problem with
You want to jump with the queue, and this causes the Amambaba's trouble, wanting to jump with the queue. No.
Allowed.
Okay, fine. You jump with the queue.
I have a problem with the major. And you see where we've reached. It is a simple thing that Norman is asking, that can NRM own up rather than being on the defensive? It was not me.
On up what?
Mismanagement of national resources has not started today. As early as 1989, there were ghost civil servants. When the liberalization process started, assets, the whole process of liberalization was corrupted. They gave those assets to themselves.
We hear they began with houses after capturing Kampala. They're taking...
If you go to the records, they will tell you that they got only 500 million shillings out of the total sale of those assets. But even the 500 million shillings was used to facilitate the sale. So there was no money at all. But I can tell you from Suruma's own statements that actually some of these assets were performing very well. So what happened? If we are to evaluate NRM stroke NRA, we should be honest enough to say that mismanagement started from day one. And therefore, the next generation of leaders, if they are to learn from the experiences of the past and also the NRM, these facts should be recognized. And as a country, we should be on consensus to say, look, we do not want what has happened to repeat itself. So let's not hide our heads under the sun.
I think, Mr. Kazoba, in the next 6 or so minutes that we have for this first 1 hour, give us the what can be done. I cross to Honorable Awich. This time round, I want to give Honorable, I cross to Mr. Joseph Otieno. This time round, I will suffocate him until we come back from the break. Beginning with Mr. Kazoba, what do you think can be done? Because he may not give us the answer now. What can be done? And then we cross to Honorable Otieno. From there, when we return, he tells us his roadmap and the UPC roadmap, if any. Charles.
Well,
maybe what you say, it is part of what he will take to the neck and sake and say, we were somewhere TikTok TV.
Hey, my friend,
this is what they suggest.
The other man has his own agenda. He's an advisor.
What can be done?
Stop dampening your own prospects like that.
Okay, what do we do?
The truth of the matter is, we are at crossroads as a country. Number one, we must sit down and talk.
With who?
All political actors, all groups of people, citizens, civil society, we must sit
where?
down.
In Kololo? Airstrip.
No, it is possible. These dialogues have happened in other countries. So there has to be a national
Onambole.
dialogue to sit down and agree on a certain agenda way forward. For instance, NRM says it is a political party.
Says, you,
Yes.
Underline the word. You mean, so you mean you don't know it's a political party? It just says.
It's
It
not,
says it
according
is
to
a
him.
political party. But when you listen to serious political science scholars, they attest that actually NRM is not a political party. We are not in a democracy. You understand? You cannot be a political party, yet you, the party, the government, the military, and all state apparatuses are fused together. That is not possible. So there cannot be democracy. Now, as a country, do we agree that we want a democracy, or we want the system that is implemented by their witches? Or we need a dictatorship? So that is why, as a country, we need to sit down and talk. We must have a national dialogue.
But you see, Mr. Kazova, basic characteristics of a democracy, periodic elections, basics, because I've done political science at some point. Basics, they will tell you, of course, power belongs to the people. They will tell you courts, about the content and the quality of the courts and the judicial system, maybe that becomes secondary. They will tell you, what do you mean when you say we are not in democracy? Because as we speak, Honorable Cheno is yet to warm up for, for an electoral office. Here, why would he participate in something that is non-democratic?
Let me tell you, we are going into internal party
primaries,
elections. Huh?
In a minute, please.
There is a likelihood that NRM might split. There is that likelihood. And this one I can speak without...
Put the prophecy down,
without
maybe you'll answer to it.
Fear of
he has become a prophet.
There is a likelihood that we are going to have an offshot, just like FDC, from the NRM. Again, why? You see, the dissent within NRM has grown to a very serious and scary level. The other day I was listening to Right Honorable Toduong saying they're not going to allow independence.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, that is the bomb.
I think that's our topic of discussion when we begin discussing the roadmap in particular. I think we also captured the chairperson, the electoral commission chairperson, I think Dr. Tang, very strict about how they are going to ban any independent, which we will ask him on whether or not it is practical.
You cannot claim that there is a democracy. Somebody, a minister, wins in a village and says he won with 10,000 votes. Which village has 10,000 votes?
Okay, those are some of the honorable wishes.
And this is NRM. We've not gone to the national elections, but internally, within the party itself, there is no democracy.
Okay, in a minute we shall be heading to a short break. Honorable Ochieno, precisely, are we in a democracy? I don't want to ask like court questions. Yes,
no, we are not, and I know we've got time. We don't have time, but
and you're willing to participate in the democratic process?
No, it's in context because I don't want to lose out on the early part of the conversation because that's a foundation for that conversation. Yeah, sure. No, quite clearly, NRA is a fraud, and it was a fraud from the beginning. The contradictions about the Kazoras, for whatever reasons, they joined the organization as comrade, which everybody quite generally suggests, most of these people were duped, and it is very unfortunate that they were duped. The only quick disclaimer I will say is that it's true that in the areas of in the theater of war, there are some people who found themselves caught up on either sides, and there are people who would have joined NRA because they're running out from the side of UNLA. But it's also true that the main theater of this war was in Luwero, and as you know, I'm also a scholar on these issues, that the majority of the people in Luwero were predominantly slightly much more in sympathy towards NRA. So more people were likely, including the propaganda, including backed by William Pikes and their external friends, they're more likely to persuade the average Muganda to go the other side. So UNLA and NRA, in terms of their track record, it's a different issue. Interestingly, because they're asking my own leadership role and the important point Charles is raising, I am one of those people who continue to push on behalf of UPC and on my own self the idea that a future national conversation must take place that must investigate the NRA war in Luwero and the conduct of NRA and UNLA in Luwero, the NRA war across this country. But back to Luwero, that we need to know exactly who did what. And the event that whatever happens, we're able to conclude that, because as Charles said, this is very important for us building foundation going forward. And then finally, Dr. Bote asked in a very interesting way in 1990 that if NRA thing was a liberation thing and it was very popular in Buganda, considering the context that Comrade Rich is saying, that as of 1991, how many majors and how many senior officers, like how many generals are from Uganda? So if that's the case, if people just basically ask that question, it's really that this thing here was a project Museveni and a few of their own friends, and many people just came and joined. They joined blindly. They have been substantially hoodwinked. In any case, just to conclude, you know that there are many, many people who've got stories, including, we know cases of sergeants, a sergeant of 30 years, without us going into details. Why would the sergeant be a sergeant of 30 years? Either because they don't agree or they don't meet a particular criteria.
Okay, Honorable Wich, that question is coming for you when we return. If indeed NRA was too much popular in Uganda, how many majors like you are and so many other ranks?
Current generals now. Yes.
But nonetheless, we are breaking for a few seconds, and by God's grace we shall return here for the three gentlemen to give us their analysis in regards to the political parties' roadmaps on whether they are mere hypotheses. Let's return shortly.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can. Although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be normal.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Our viewers, my name is Norman Tumuhimbise, and I'm privileged to have the three eloquent, articulate, and senior citizens of the Republic of Uganda. Of course, I wouldn't want to say led by, because they will assume you are leading the team. No, we have Honorable Wichipola.
Leading the defense.
Leading the defense, the Defense Council of NRM.
Indefensible.
The Defense Council of NRM, and like back in the day of high school debates, on the proposition side, we have so and so, and on the opposition side, we have so and so. So, in particular, our topic of discussion was and still remains on whether the political parties' roadmaps are practical or mere hypothesis. I wanted to highlight some of the highlights rather in the NRM recently launched roadmap, and what was quite interesting for me, maybe you would this is subject to discussion amongst our my panel here, is that first of all, NRM, I don't want to use the word claims. Okay, it says it has close to 19 or so million voters. That's what you say, the Defense Council, the NRM. Previously, the records say we had, I think, 18 or so million voters in 2021, rather in 2021 elections. So we can, the EC hasn't come to give us the specifics in regards to the total number of voters, even when we did do the voter register updates. We shall reach there perhaps by God's grace. The other issue that caught, of course, many, especially younger people's eyes, is about the 3 million cash in regards to a flag bearer for MOP. Whoever wishes to contest internally in NRM ought to pay 3 million, and then part of the primaries now, we are now discussing internal politics. 1.5 million respectively for the mayors, Lord mayors, and also 20 million shillings, which I find slightly fair for a person who dreams of presiding over a country should at least show commitment by paying 20 million, and that's a personal view. It's a personal view, commitment. We have moved around some people, especially people who say, after I have paid my 3 million and I lose this primary, this flag, maybe the party should think of giving me at least a 1 million as a consolation. And the party takes the 2 million. Young people, and maybe they have some bit of a point. I wanted to be, because there are benefits that come along with having a flag. As far as I know, once one gets a flag for NRM, for instance, for some bit of basic campaign materials are supposedly meant to come from the party for which you hold their flag.
Generally, most parties, yes.
Yeah, sure. So he who loses after paying the 3 million thinks you should give them back 1 million, and they go console themselves, even having lost. But I want to give you some bit of the other one which caught my eyes and attention, and so to many, is about the collective, this debate. Like you have all the NRM people vying for MPship to have one campaign on one platform. And before we begin with the why, or rather with whether this is practical, Honorable, which you could put it down as I finish this preamble, which might guide our debate, is on whether it is practical anyway. And I'll give you some bit of a history. In 2006, I was in senior 6, I remember, 2006, yeah. And I hail from Udwengo district. I was being represented by Honorable Kezimbira Miyingo. Back in the day, he was a Minister for Internal Affairs. So this that you are bringing back was tried at a time. For those of us who are lazy in reading and following some sequence of events, it had been tried in 2006. By then, if I'm not mistaken, it was Honorable Rugunda who was leading the NRM. I think he was, the NRM. He was holding the office that Tango Doi holds now in 2006. That one I remember because I was a political follower. This didn't work. In Idwengo, Bukoto Midwest, I can assure you, people would fight before even the rally, before the rally ends. Big fights. Now, if people could fight in 2006, where the aspirants were like 2 or so, what about now when your flag can have a tune of even 8 or so people? Is this practical? Sadly, even when this election, primary elections in NRM were in courts manipulated, and Honorable, now with the late Kezimbi Miyingo, came as a victor in the primaries, a one Sejoba Isaac contested as an independent and won him. The sad news were, in the night of declaring the results, the general results now, Kezimbi Miyingo died at Isambia Hospital. That's a background. Now, Honorable Awich, with due honesty, without fear or favor, are you convinced that some of these things you suggest are practical and achievable, or a mere political hypothesis? May you proceed, sir? I'll
proceed. Now, there are some issues. I'll just summarize them before I go to your question. Kazomba was saying, why don't we own up? Owning what? And then he was also saying there was mismanagement. Instead of saying NRM should own up, true, there could be shortcomings, which some people have been arrested and put in jail and prosecuted. But over and above, instead of saying we own up, giving the impression like there's a failure, instead we should be thanked for the achievement that we have brought, including improving life expectancy from 43 to 60, including making Uganda the happiest country in East Africa.
No longer.
Including many things. So don't confuse isolated mistakes.
What's your yardstick for the happiest country?
It is measured. Check on Google.
No, that was...
Check on Google. It is not an NRM measurement.
It's no longer the case.
You go to Google and check happiness index. We only tied with Kenya at 4.5. Tanzania far below has Rwanda, far, everybody. So it is not an NRM thing. Check on Google. So rather than saying we own up, just thank us for what we have done. Now, sitting down to discuss what? Because right now...
Are you referring to the dialogue he suggested?
Yes, the dialogue. Then where do you put the people who voted? The Constitution says people vote, and people have voted. And now, because some people have lost, they want to use the back door, the window, to say, ignore their vote. Come and we sit to Yogerechi.
We have had the National
Consultative Forum. Now, about likelihood of NRM breaking up, well, zero. It's everybody's views. But for us, we do believe that we have the capacity to handle contradictions in the party. Now, those who think the contradictions will be so major and they step aside, that would be their right.
No, but you have precedents where you have managed internal, because you say you have capacity to manage the internal conflicts, and therefore,
yes, I
do. There precedents?
Yes, I will do. Let me say how to resolve.
Yeah.
How we resolve.
Maybe I could let's refer to the recently concluded election in Kawempe, where you have two NRM leaning.
Yes, I like to say that with all this bleak image that Kazawa paints leading to owning up, and then the situation is so bad we should sit and talk as a country. Instead, research currently, including Afrobarometer, shows, and some of us were shocked because the way we had been intimidated, we had been intimidated, but the research shows that NRM is still the most preferred party among Uganda.
You had started getting scared.
Yes. We were shocked because the way the opposition had bombarded us, we thought that this research would show otherwise. But
You need to
so
take
far
cover.
now, research has shown that NRM is the preferred party. Now, I go to your question on the roadmap. The roadmap, you mentioned so many things. First, on the 19 million. The 19 million, I like to say that first, our register. There are two things here. We have the NRM party register. That is those who think they are members of NRM. And we have the NRM voting register. Meaning, therefore, NRM register, those who say the NRM, includes people of 16 years. So, remember the 19 includes children of 16 years who are not voting. Now, it is from the membership register that we shall extract those who are voting. So, we have two kinds of registers because we want to capture our members beginning from that year so that they grow up in the party. That is one. Now, how we reach at this party register, we took it to the villages. The register sat under some mango tree, waited for those who are coming. This one registered. We brought it back. We thrust it. We took it back to the village 3 times. Now, if it is our village register who was sitting under the mango or under some veranda, is the one who deceived us, we don't know. But we did due diligence. But you can't be perfect. I rest my issue on the register. Now, the fee structure. The fee structure was a discussion held on SEC. SEC proposed this, discussed it, and agreed. But remember, this is a party situation of fundraising for the party, and members agreed through their leadership. As you rightly put, a flag bearer for NRM averagely gets 30 million for parliamentary, meaning that if there are 10 people who stood and they raised 3 million each, all the money will go to the flag bearer. They will collect from all these contestants and give it. Yes, that is what happens. So for you to get 30 million shillings, how do you want us to raise it?
At least put it at 3.
How do we raise it? So similarly, all these stages of flag bearers, they are given money. So the money that this one collect are given back to this one. And it is part of our revenue.
So you find the money justifiable?
Yeah, it is our revenue generation, and SEC discussed and agreed it. Now, roadmap, we shall follow it. It's not a mere thing on the paper, and we are going to start it effectively. We are going to follow the roadmap religiously. It is action-packed, but we shall make sure we follow it as it is. And that is to show to you that we are a serious party. The question of independence. Independence, we are guided by our constitution, and all party members agree. Now, you will know that in law, a consent agreement or an agreement between parties are enforceable between the parties. So this party member will volunteer to surrender his right to say, I am going, because you are telling them, if you don't want to go to this game, then you go straight away as independent from the beginning. But if you come, you sign an agreement, a consent, you are bound by your own agreement. The law says, whatever you agreed, you are bound by it. You are not forced. In fact, the preamble says, cognizant of the article in the Constitution that allows me to stand, meaning that you are doing it consciously. So we shall call on the party members who will agree to do this to accept the rule of the game, because they will sign and they are bound by their agreement.
Do you think, in your view, that the president will bow to such a decision?
This again was a discussion agreed in SEC. It was a SEC.
Aren't there presidents where he has been with 2 candidates?
Yes, a SEC chaired by him. We don't know, but this is a check chaired by him. So he's the one who agreed to this. It is not Tango Doi.
But a second, Honorable Witch, in Ichisoro, not even just in Ichisoro, Mr. President is fond of having the official NRM flag bearer, and then he's like, also this one is my member. She's my girl, my daughter. How prepared do you think you are when it comes to that day? Because if it's about punishing, maybe he's the gentleman you ought to begin with in terms of punishing him for not following the internal democracies of saying this is our candidate, because he's on record, and this is not mere allegations. He's on record. How prepared?
No, what the president said in Kisoro was not, this is our candidate. He said, this is our party member. And indeed,
A candidate. She was a candidate. I mean, she was a
no,
candidate.
You said a party member, didn't say a candidate.
What I'm saying, this lady was a candidate in an election.
Yes, so
where one would expect a principal party president to
correct.
isolate
Yes.
himself from a party member. Just thinking.
That is not our method of work.
Okay,
She's
tell
not
us your
an
method,
enemy.
sir.
She's not an enemy. The president recognized that she was a party member, and indeed she is a party member. Only that she went there as an independent after the party primary, but she was not yet dismissed from the party. Neither had she resigned. from the
And
party.
she won.
Yeah,
Fortunately,
and she
or
won.
otherwise.
So therefore, the president mentioning her was to the effect that she's
It
a
was
party
optimistic.
member, not that she's a party candidate or even a candidate for us. Now, so that answers the question of independence. On the question of joint campaigns, I was listening to you talk about joint campaigns.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it went to your part of the world wrongly. A joint campaign, first of all, emanates from an NRM philosophy of transparency. That if you are going to talk, don't talk behind my back. Talk here when I'm hearing, so that I have a right of reply. For your information, the joint campaign started way back. The first NRC, the expansion of NRC, we did joint campaign. That was, I think, 88 or 87. I remember I was in Entebbe, and we voted for Dr. Matovo. Matovo was some white man, kind of, but he was the head of virus research. And he stayed in parliament for a long time, like 3-4 terms. And he ended up chairman of Makerere University Council. Now, we voted for Matovo because we were the NRA then there. We were voting as ordinary citizens. The joint campaign started long ago and lining up. In CA elections,
Yeah,
CA, I was in Intare school. The Winebianyima, they were campaigning in Umbara, we were following. It was joint campaign. 2016, joint campaign was conducted successfully.
2016.
2016. 2021, it couldn't because 2021 was Corona. It is in the party constitution. If it wasn't the Corona thing of 2021, we would have still conducted joint campaign. It was done in 2016, everywhere successfully. Therefore, the joint campaigns, which is a constitutional matter, by the way, is not electoral guideline. There's a difference between electoral guideline and a
mandatory.
constitution. This is in the party constitution. And therefore, the party stands by it. It is emanating from the principle of transparency, that you don't go behind some house and tell a lie about me and then go the other way. Let us come together. We pick numbers. If the three of us are candidates, we put numbers in a basin, a piece of paper.
Yeah,
You pick, Cielo picks, Kazoba picks, and then you said, which number have you picked? Number 1, you will start. Kazoba, which number have you picked? Number 2, you will go. I pick number 3, I will be the last to speak. Then we move to another station.
So in
it has worked and it will
so
continue
in short,
to work.
you think you have the capacity to manage
Yes.
that process. But of course, by
Yes,
God's
and
grace,
we have done it before.
We shall be here.
We have done it even in 2016. What is important is that if a constituency, every district has election officers, and every constituency, NRM election officers, and every constituency has NRM, the registrar we are talking about, they have it at the constituency. They are the ones who conduct. They just ask for 1 or 2 policemen to be there. Now, finally, how we resolve? We resolve we resolve in many ways. For example, we are in our roadmap. We have a team which is supposed to travel to all constituencies to meet intending candidates, aspirants, particularly at parliamentary, but it will be held at all levels, to talk to them so that we avoid damage control after they have already gone to primary, they have lost, then you start talking to them. Then they start giving conditions. I've already invested my money, I've used a lot of money, my followers make me be RDC and all that.
Ambassador.
Now we are going to start with talking to them before. That is part of the resolution. But after that, when we hold a primary election, there's what we call tribunals at the Election Commission. These tribunals also hear cases. and resolve it. So we have multiple ways of resolving.
I'll come back to you and give you precedents where you haven't been able to resolve such concerns. With sometimes talking about UPC makes me sad, because it's a party, just like so many, that has, I don't know how many factions, and this is the public opinion, Honorable Ochieno. They will tell you there are those on, is it 8th floor at Uganda House? 6th floor. Then there are those of Honorable Ochieno who are officeless in regards to, because the headquarters is not in their hands. Do you have a roadmap, sir? Or you have roadmaps? One yours?
You sort of raised the concerns,
yeah.
But before we do that, I think I just need to make 3 very quick observations. One is that I'm very disappointed by Comrade Awichi's dismissive call on this question of national dialogue.
Yeah.
Comrade Awich, you're amongst the most open-minded progressive members of NRA. You're amongst those with clear authority, particularly because you have been in this thing since the crude times in the bush. And so you should have every reason to be able to influence and include to bank tables and tell many of some of these latter-day guys who want to become more popely than the Pope that no, this country belongs to us, and like we're discussing, Machele, the Kazoras and others, you should be able to be among those people who will be able to give direction. In any case, earlier you were even being cheeky by referring to these terrible guys who joined the bush, like the Tumukundes and others from Akera University in 1981, by claiming that they joined because they had saw some terror from the UPC administration, and so they had legitimate reasons to do so. In any case, I would even say that, well, you guys went to the bush 6 weeks after UPC government. So I don't know what terrible things the UPC government had done in 6 weeks.
Yeah, because the election was on 30th December 1980, and then by...
it was about the 12th, it was declared.
No, we mean the election, the general election.
It was 10th and 11th.
Of December.
So the results were very clear about 11th, 13th. I think the inauguration of the president would have been, I think, about the 15th or thereabout. So quite clearly, the government was hardly 6 weeks old. Then these guys went to the bushes. My point is, it's not about point scoring. I think, like Charles is saying, you guys, we've had our pasts, we've had issues, current we have issues. Comrade Rich and I are of this generation that we say, look, you guys, we need to find a way in which you're able to put a settlement and draw a line and begin to be able to move forward. So it's very, very important. And in any case, if you say that, look, like I think you were telling Charles that, look, we had elections, we won elections, why should we talk? You guys had lost elections. Museveni had lost elections in Barra. The cheeky guy couldn't even go to a court in Barra, but came to break people's necks. Some of us could now say that we want to reinstitute a new mechanism in which we try Mr. Museveni for the atrocities he committed in Luweero, and try him for treason against the Republic of Uganda. We don't want to say, do we go there? Simply no. We need to find a way in which we would have a meaningful settlement. So this national dialogue conversation is one which, for me, I push and must push, but I really want to encourage people like Comrade Awich to make sure that we push forward for that, rather than dismissing the manner in which you do.
Rather than call for a national dialogue, why don't you convince citizens to vote them out?
I will come to that now on the next one, because that's a fair
observation.
The point about independence, Comrade Awich actually is right. I have advocated, and sometimes your fantastic camera ladies and others, wherever I meet young people, I tell them that actually politics of independence actually not really generally usually democracy. In established democracies, I lived in Britain for most of my exile running away from these NRA bandits. You would be very lucky to find 2 independents in parliament. In fact, recently, because of the issue in the Labour Party, I think they're up to 5 independents, but usually there are no independents. So independent of what? So you lose an election. Independence normally like somebody who stood against Iraqi war, and then he was a former BBC journalist and then put on white. So it became like a trademark thing. But politically, you must belong to an ideological school. You're either Labour, Conservative, whatever. You must belong to a political. As an individual, it all tends to be very strange. What program am I going to be able to push? But where I find a little bit of a contradiction, Comrade, which I actually thought, and Norman is right. Once you stand within the party constitution, once you actually stand against the party position, you know, you should have breached the constitution to the extent that you should really be dismissed from the party, you know, suspended and usually actually dismissed. Now, the idea that Museveni is saying that, oh, she's still our member. No, Museveni is confusing Ugandans. And of course, if that's the Bush deal in NRA, that's a different thing. You know, it must be. So ideally, at that time, you have broken the rules. You're not a member. You could be our supporter. We might have sympathies with you, but you're not. Because you see why I'm trying to push this. Because normally you're trying to push these programs because you're teaching us democracy and you're enabling our viewers to see how best and how normal we should be able to run political organizations. So independence, ideally, I really don't have sympathies with them generally. You know, you lose an internal election democratically, you know, you should concede.
If you lost,
however, because of the weaknesses that are raised, particularly from the NRA things, it tells you about political weakness, which I'll link up much later, in political parties, general and organizations. And in NRA, of course, is the mess. Some political organizations...
Honorable Chen, if you fraudulently lost a UPC primary, would you come as independent or you would consider...
That's what I'm saying. That generally, unfortunately, people come as independents out of those grievances, but they should not be encouraged. That's my point. You know, some people lose, but they don't want to lose like Museveni that never likes to lose. Museveni lost the election in 1980. The guy is a terrible loser. So he lost and went to the bush and has caused us the mess in the last 40 years.
I am repeating this, Honorable Ocheno. If you lost UPC primaries fraudulently, would you contest?
I've heard this
or
answer.
You would, in protest, not, but of course remain unsatisfied?
I think right now, interestingly, I am in court because I lost, I was declared, I won the UPC leadership and I wasn't declared. I'm in court, except thanks to this incompetence of the NRA courts. I'm in court for the last 4 years. But I'm actually should be officially the president of Uganda People's Congress. I should be seated at the 6th floor of Uganda House, and I've got all the evidence. So I went to court. I went to court to seek a judicial process, and I think I told your program that usually I don't call myself president because I want the processes to go on, because it's not about me, myself, and I.
So do you
I'm
have
encouraging young people, including your young viewers, that no, this thing should be about processes and decency rather than me, myself, and I.
Does UPC have a roadmap? If yes,
at the moment, before I do that, the final problem is joint campaign. I'll answer that. The joint campaign thing also is another. Actually, it's very interesting, and other political parties need to be able to look at this. I proposed the joint campaigns for the elections to replace Mama Miria. Jim McCain and I bought into that idea, but somehow for strategic reasons, it was not agreed. I think internally as political parties, this thing should be encouraged. I think joint parties make these very corrupted electoral processes much cheaper for candidates. It tends to be slightly, generally much more transparent. But I know candidates with a lot more money, a lot more power, and those ones who are experts at rigging tend not to like joint election campaigning because they think that it favors weaker candidates, but weaker candidates who are actually good with members of the public. So I think it's something that generally I would encourage. But see, I'm answering some of the questions much earlier because it's really about the processes and encouraging people out there, including people in other political parties, to consider this. As far as UPC is concerned, of course, we're in a difficult position because, as I said, who leads on the roadmap? Jim McCain is controlling Uganda House by force. You know, he chased Olara Tunu from there. He's not leader. The High Court ruled against him. Court of Appeal ruled against him. Supreme Court ruled against him. So he is officially not the leader of the party. So, but he's running around thanks to the way he's being enabled by some of his friends in high places. You know, he's running around. So is it his roadmap? Walobiri, who rigged against myself and declared himself a leader on 28th of December 2020. Have you seen him in Luengo? Have you seen him on this program here? The guy is gone missing. Part of the deal maybe is also been him and others. And so that's the unfortunate thing. I am running around trying to do the best of what I can, hoping that I wait for, instead of going to break people's necks in Luwero like the NRA guys did, that I wait for a judicial process that resolves the question of our leadership almost certainly that declares that I'm the party leader, and I'm able to then build onto what I've got as part of a roadmap. Meaning, therefore, that because we don't have a definitive answer for you, that's the challenge UPC as a party is facing. But allow
So
me to
in
say
short,
that
you
while
don't have an official roadmap.
yes, and that's the challenge. But that said, I think I can answer slightly beyond UPC. That if you see what happened in Kawempe, and if you see some of the manner in which is raising issues with other political parties, you can actually see the challenges facing maybe NUP, FDC, unfortunately, some of the challenges they've got. Political parties outside NRA that do not have the resources and capacities, I think would be struggling with this roadmap. And in any case, one of the things that is making political parties struggle outside NRA is the shock way in which we saw the Kawempe by-election. This is the conversation I'm having with people. So many people are quite concerned that if Kawempe is something to go by, people are struggling to come to terms, to regroup and reorganize as political parties and organization. But I know people.
I'll conclude with this
working
question
around
for you
these
in a few
How
seconds.
people will be ready to counter the NRA behavior come the next election, I think is very hard. So it's possibly too early to ask.
This is a question now.
Yes.
Yeah, you might accuse me for asking it so early. Honorable Ochieng, with due honesty, especially to citizens that are watching you, maybe for those who are young, should be reminded that you were in power twice.
Yes.
And you were not able to retain the power twice because of Honorable Witch and others.
I'm very proud
Now,
of that record, yes.
a second. Now, internally, and this, forgive me for this word, you look a confused party. Internally. Okay, a divided party. Let me use, okay.
I think divided.
Yeah, a divided party. A divided party. Where does it get the authority to believe that you can unite a country when internally you are disunited?
Can you imagine that NRA is being ruled by a father and a son who's a commander of the army but survives by treats, and if you see what Mr. Museveni's son does, and
so you want to lead us when you are also three of you?
No,
Anyhow,
no. If you see the mess we have under NRA, and these guys have been around for the last 40 years, you know, you should praise UPC for the excellent manner in which we governed the first water government of the first UPC administration, when we built everything that these guys broke, and the next one, which was hardly 4.5 years, and while NRA guys were busy breaking people's necks in Luwero, for us we're busy delivering in Kampala.
Okay.
No, on the basis of our track record, there is no reason why citizens of Uganda don't have confidence with that. Where you're absolutely right is that, and look, I'm a politician, I'm a political activist, I'm a diplomat, but also I can tell you that I have done political consultancy at global level, including media and media presentation perception, including advising governments. I can tell you electorates, now this is free advice, and NRA guys are smiling, electorates don't like divided parties.
Yeah, of course.
You know, citizens and voters, particularly female voters, don't like violence. That's one of the reasons why I told my UPC friends, particularly the behavior in Uganda House, that's completely unacceptable. So when you find a population like Uganda, which has been cowed and abused and blackmailed and terrorized by NRA over 40 years, the least they want to hear is people whispering in a corridor, quarreling or disagreeing. So electorate want to see a united political party, a united voice. Electorates tend to like leadership, you know, a strong man at the front, usually a predominant man, or a strong woman with a lead, clear message, things like that. At the moment, there is no political organization in this country which is providing that. NRA has got relative advantage because of power of incumbency and the big nameness of Museveni and the power they've got in terms of influencing the media.
Okay.
So for other parties, you know, and I'm just adding slightly more for these purposes, other parties to their credit like NUP has got the relative wave. So from that point of view, and because they predominantly dominate Central Uganda, which is also a big population, they have that mini relative advantage. If you stretch it across the country, it will bring you back to the question you're asking me, that the citizens, where they really kind of stop. So then for other parties like UPC, DP, FDC, and including the other breakaway, no, we're in a difficult position. So I'm giving you a holistic and very authoritative, genuine, open answer that no, I can't pretend about it. That is why it's actually much more urgent that all the established political parties away from NRA, we put our houses in order. And for the leadership of these political parties and organizations, especially those who were much more privileged than myself without a formal office, that they should not take it for granted. They should take the burden of responsibility and make sure they represent Ugandans.
Okay. A reason for which, perhaps, Honorable, which suggests that you shouldn't hide your weaknesses of not being able to convince citizens, and then you want to run to a dialogue to get free power. Anyhow,
No,
let's go.
I wouldn't do that. Do you know our advantage?
That's what he seems to
our
suggest.
advantage is
So-
this. Our advantage as a party is that we have the track record, we've got the values, we've got the ideas, we've got the ideology, and we've got the evidence. So UPC's problem is merely on leadership. Convincing Ugandans will take us less than 6 months to break apart this NRA and give the youth of this country the future.
Okay. Mr. Charles Kazowa, hearing present, by your views, you sound independent-minded. You have heard the submissions from both of them. What do you think? Especially in regards to their roadmap on whether or not it is achievable and practical. In any case, do even citizens understand such roadmaps? Because it is one thing for Honorable Tanga to sit at Chadondo Plot 1 and launch something. And then in Idwengo, where I hail from, and people asking, okay, a map to where?
Yeah.
Pick it up from there.
In 2027, I'll be contesting for the East African Parliament. But for the last 5 years, I've been assessing the decision to come under a party or independent. And I came to a conclusion that I will stand as an independent.
Independent of what? No ideology subscribe to. Not UPC, a left winger, center left, center right.
The confusion within political parties is too much and very demoralizing for somebody that means serious business when it comes to politics. You see, the current environment, especially within NRM, is for job seekers, but they come posturing as leaders. Somebody that comes with 100 million buys off the Electoral Commission to get a flag. The opponent or the other competitor who has brilliant ideas that can propel the party forward is kicked out technically. You've seen the violence within political parties. Internal elections, too much violence. Now, for anybody that seriously wants to realign the politics of this country, does not have to waste time going to political parties. I have had the privilege of interrogating what has been happening in NRM. Because at some point, I was very close to the people who have contested in the previous primaries. And they have been expressing their grievances. If you listen to them, you would not want to compete for the flag of NRM. In fact, last year, I had conceived an idea of bringing independents together to form a movement that can remove these parties. Because if you keep observing, the number of independents is growing. Those that are aggrieved, they are kicked out, they are denied the party flag. When they go for elections, they win. How come? So somebody spends close to 400 million in seeking a party flag. That is lost. Goes to national elections, spends another 500 million. So why waste your resources? Why not put just your little resources into one basket, compete once and for all, present yourself to the population, rather than pretending that...
Mr. Kazoba, do you seem to suggest, because when you mention, the way you are mentioning about the independence vis-a-vis political parties, do you seem to suggest that Ugandans haven't understood the principle of multi-party democracy? If yes, is it intentional?
Number one, when you interact with some members, some of the voters, indeed, they have no idea what these parties stand for, including NRM. By the way,
you don't know
leave alone even voters.
Even
the people who seek positions within NRM
don't point at my
don't
list.
even know what NRM stands for.
Honorable Which put that down and...
They only know one thing, that NRM is yellow, period.
For money. 100.
Yes? Now, that is very problematic. That you have a population that does not appreciate
multi-party democracy,
that does not appreciate the ideas, or the population that is ignorant
of the ideologies of each political party.
Yes. Now you also have parties that are so confused, greedy, and have turned themselves into mafia agents. So that is the confusion in the country, which we must clean up.
And you think independents are a solution? Because
now,
if... a second, Mr. Charles Kazoba. How do you expect someone... Because you see, when you mention independent, you are independent of capitalism. You are independent of... okay, let's use now the common terms. Center-right, center-left, extreme, you know. So okay, what are you bringing?
What are you? Yeah.
What are you offering? Is it a bit of collecting so little from each one of the ideologies and come up with a cocktail?
And then you become multi-ideological,
so you become
like
NRM. So please proceed, sir.
First of all, I've told you, all these parties have no ideologies.
Honorable Which is here and
They don't.
Charles.
Okay, we'll come back to you. That is according to him and so many other independents. They don't.
They don't. Let them not even lie.
NRM has Pan-Africanism. But let's proceed with your, ideology.
Let me tell you, the principles they talk about, yes, you will find them in various concepts of ideologies. You cannot tell me what is Pan-Africanism?
Don't ask me, please. We have a Pan-Africanist here. Honorable Which Pola, on behalf of NRM, is going to tell us the ideology of Pan-Africanism, and also there is patriotism. You know, those strong words. Yeah, Changwanzi people, patriotism. So
every citizen is patriotic.
Yeah.
Sure.
Citizens that pay taxes.
You who burn tires after NRM constructing our good roads, and you burn tires. How patriotic are you?
How do you become patriotic if you're stealing public resources? How? In fact, you shouldn't even be talking of patriotism if you're a member of NRM, because you are a thief. You are stealing public resources. How then you become patriotic?
Use your minute and then across to Honorable Which.
Some of us have concluded that all these parties claim to have ideologies, but in actual sense they do not.
Is your idea temporary?
The intention, as of today, the intention is not to have functional political parties. So that is why some of us, by saying that, well, we can come as independents, it's because of the environment that exists. that you cannot have a truly functional
Political
political party that delivers democracy. So, minus that, what else do you want? If there are to be elections, by the way, let me tell you, these guys are just looking for shortcuts. Mao, one of his proposals before cabinet is that we go by the system of South Africa. We vote
Parliamentary.
parties
The one where
instead of individuals. You understand? So that the population can probably attempt to appreciate the ideas parties
a
stand
party
for.
not here.
But you've seen now Todwong is short-circuiting it by saying no independence. Of course, those are theories. Those are total theories. By December, you'll see how many independence we are going to have in this country. Even NUP is attempting to do the same.
Delegates conference and
That
primaries.
once you decide to quit, I mean to come as an independent, then you are dismissed from the party. Who cares? There are personalities that are bigger than a party in a constituency.
Yeah.
They don't really give a damn.
So why would
Instead, it is the party.
Upon realization that you are bigger than a party, why would you then waste their time coming for their flag?
No, you see, if you are trying to build governance in a country, you sell ideas to different people. So if I decide, for instance, to go and sell my ideas to General Muntu, and we agree that I come under his organization, but then I discover that the internal environment does not favor the values I stand for, I immediately quit, I leave.
Okay.
You see, if indeed multi-party democracy was functional in this country, you do not have people jumping from one party to another. Some people have been jumping from one party to another. In a year, they belong to 4 parties. Some individuals even hold membership cards of about 3 parties.
In their homes.
If you don't mind, Charles, ideologically, politically, because you're also a researcher, and I'm quite surprised by that. Where would you say you are ideologically, politically?
Independent.
Which first of all, I've told you don't have any ideology.
So, okay, what ideology
So
do you follow?
what in terms in global political terms, where are you ideologically?
Are you a rightist? Are you a leftist?
No. First of all, we must agree what ideology is best for Uganda, is best for this country. Me as a person, I believe in globalization. I'm a globalist. And globalization comes with so many things.
Are you able to swallow
including
and have them?
capitalism and others? Or what my friend here was talking about. I'm a globalist because I believe that the rules set, the standards set at global level, if fully implemented in all these political units that we call countries, they can uplift the welfare of an individual.
Okay. First of all is to exonerate Honorable Joseph Ochieno. He's not a political, he has been his one party. So even in his home, he has one card. So he's,
yes.
And that's very good to celebrate teaching people to.
You might be surprised.
Hey. Ochieno, have you heard? He's not yet to cross to any party.
The globalist wants to dream and pray.
Yeah, you have a few seconds to come to
I know of individuals who belong to NRM, but they quietly went and bought NOP cards.
No, I know many. I mean, well, I don't know, but anyway.
Politics of
And they tell you that something can happen. Something can happen.
Okay.
It's better to have that card.
Okay, I
So
have.
you never know.
Yeah, sure.
And allow me with my glory.
A few seconds, huh?
No, allow me with my glory. No, is Uganda People's Congress and nothing else in the future. But I'm an ideologically driven politician, and actually, genuinely, this country, this continent, and this globe, it must be driven by sets of values. And one of the biggest missing link is that. And I think whatever happens, whatever our disagreements, we must stand for something.
Okay.
It's interesting, my colleagues, the globalists.
There are a few comments here, and some of them I want to mention. Our viewer, Brooke Williams Chikomeko. We are going to see fights, serious fights in NRM primaries. They will kill each other. He adds, Mr. Museveni supported the former Vice President of Kenya instead of the NRM candidate in 2016, and Kenya lost miserably. He's trying to give us precedence. You see, when we are here, we are talking to a globe, and the people quote our words.
That's correct, yes.
So every lie that is given to the public is brought back to us. Every pretense. So we are here, Honorable, which I repeat, your national chairperson, closer here in the Kachiri, that's constituency.
Yeah, Kachiri, yeah.
He couldn't stand the shame and campaigned for the independent. He actually dropped the official flag bearer, because here Brooke Williams says Mr. Museveni supported the former vice president instead of the NRM candidate. In primaries, that the former VP had lost to a young man there who came as an official flag bearer. But of course, perhaps the president and the team couldn't take on the defeat. And he literally lost later, of course, in the general elections. And then Brooke Williams goes ahead to say, NRM supported an independent candidate against arrogant flag bearer Rukutana. These are all precedents which are on record, and just the previous elections. I think, I don't want to ask on his behalf, but maybe applying my logic, do you still have the capacity to say you are independent, therefore you are not one of us, you are simply our member, and you bring the president and the SEC members, that top cream, to order and say you are abusing the NRM constitution? Do you have the courage?
We have the courage. But here I had noted also that what is the status of a person who stands as an independent? Now, the constitution provides that if you contest against the official flag bearer of the party, you cease to be a party member. You should lose your, the penalty is that grave.
Okay.
But what has happened is that I think the draftsmen or draftswomen of this constitution did not take care of Article 44 of the Constitution of Uganda. Article 44 of the Constitution of Uganda says, one of the things, it talks of 4 things: prohibition of slavery, the right to habeas corpus, prohibition of torture, and a fair hearing. So the Constitution is saying, even under what circumstances, please hear me.
There should be.
So now this has kind of tied the hands of the party. That is it now automatic that, as your Constitution provides, that should you stand as independent, you lose without even hearing? So now many people are falling back to say the party constitution cannot override the national constitution. All constitutions should be pegged on the mother constitution.
Why don't you lose subject to the fair?
Because that is why I started with the draftsmen and draftswomen of that constitution.
I think
so that has encouraged that debate.
The repugnance of your constitution vis-a-vis the mother law, for instance, it would be a defense enough, for instance, for the president to say, Honorable Awich lost the primaries. For that matter, I am going with Honorable Kazoba as the official flag bearer, and therefore bar Awich from even getting closer, because the mere fact that people see Mr. Museveni with one of your independents qualifies such a candidate to say, but you see, Museveni was with me.
Anyway, I thought you would ask your question, we answer so that we flow.
Yeah, proceed.
So I was saying that the status of a person who stands as independent is that. And as I have always told people, even when you pass a law, you think you have passed a very beautiful law, but when you set it to action, that is why constitutions are amended. And I think this is a lacuna that needs amendment. So that even a expeditious hearing is hard.
Yeah.
So for somebody to lose a membership. The other thing I took note of, do the people understand the roadmap? Yes, for us, the people may not understand, but we have inbuilt system where we should explain. For example, we have our roadmap starting from the expression of interest in the village by village LC1 or village members who want to lead chairman of NRM in the village. Those ones who get yellow bicycle. So we start with that, and it ends up with what is saying election to a Yala, because even us, we have to organize that election of a Yala in our caucus. So if you look at our roadmap, that is a beginning from the village to election of a Yala members. So if people don't understand, we shall try to explain to them. Now,
in 40 seconds, it's like our time is up, but it's, yeah, kindly.
Now, there's issue of people going to fight in NRM. Of course, we know that because our party is popular. Our flag is loved. You can't compare the fight in our flag to that of Basari. What is Basari? Jema. Jema. Of course, people will not go and fight for Jema flag.
How many people fought in DP US because it's also popular? Because you see, if you say every popular party fights.
And then people still love the movement. Now, this is the one what is causing confusion on independent. And some of us during the referendum, we argued that we should remain in the movement. People said we go multi-party. We have gone to multi-party, but the mindset and the love is still in the movement. Thanks God it is provided in the constitution that a movement political system is an alternative. Maybe we shall go back in future.
Your second, I think your time is up.
I was wondering why.
I want to give you my final question in just a few seconds. Do you think under your leadership, now 40 years, no doubt, in fact, undisturbed leadership, for lack of another word, do you think people understand the multi-party democracy? Not to explain, I think it's people, a yes that we can cross.
People struggle to understand, and that is what I was saying, that people still believe in the movement, which we fought for in the referendum, and we were defeated.
Sir, your closing remarks, because
our
time
is
it's
just unfortunate that you've spent the last 40 years trying to entrench a monolithic system, which is not a democracy, and a system that NRA as Comrade Rich is saying they continue to push. But it's a system which is completely inconsistent with the values of the people of this country, the values of Africa and the global reality today, where competition of politics about a competition of ideas based on values and ideology. The kind of values that represent Uganda People's Congress, that's why I'm stuck on it. Unfortunately, as we go towards elections, yes, the disadvantage, one of the disadvantages we have for UPC is the weaknesses structurally on the ground. But whatever happens post that, I think the future is possible.
Okay, Mr. Kazo, with your independent mind, do you think you are in position to?
In fact, people, Ugandans have totally lost interest in these parties. They are voting their tribes.
Yeah, sure.
They are voting beauty. Yeah. Your appearance. That is why these days, if you want to win votes, you have to get a very good camera person so that
to
you
beautify
appear
your face and
handsome
for your
beautiful.
poster.
So, the truth of the matter is that we are far, 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 far away from multipartyism. And there is very little effort, even from the political actors in charge today, to promote multipartyism. Yet,
10 seconds, please.
Multipartyism promotes exchange of ideas, competition,
minutes,
so that the country gets the best from the best.
Okay.
Yes.
Colleagues that have been watching, comrades, ladies and gentlemen, here and abroad, we thank you for, of course, spending your 2 full hours and a few minutes, I think 3 also minutes past 9, for, to listen in from every colleague here in present. You may makes sense to you and also avoid what you think doesn't. At the end of it all, we need Uganda a peaceful country and a prosperous one. Whoever is holding any office there, out there, ensure that you are executing the role for which you occupy that office. God may bless one and bless all for God and my country.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.